This is the new Xiaomi 14T Pro versus last year's Xiaomi 13T Pro. After having the Xiaomi 13T Pro for the last year, since the release of that phone as my daily driver, I wanted to see how good the Xiaomi 14T Pro is gonna be and how big of a difference there's gonna be between those two smartphones. Starting off with the screens, as you can see, both are pretty much the same. Essentially, this is the same exact screen on both of the smartphones, the only difference being the bezels on the Xiaomi 13T Pro are bigger compared to the Xiaomi 14T Pro. Essentially, what they did is place the same exact panel with the same exact stats, just made this phone a little bit smaller and the bezels around the screen smaller. So on a side-by-side comparison, if I hold them like this, I can definitely tell that there is less of a bezel around the screen. But in everyday scenario, when you just hold the phones, you probably are not gonna see the difference. So both of these screens are AMOLED 6.67-inch display with up to 144 Hz, and both being an AMOLED, the colors are definitely amazing, the contrast is definitely there, and the blacks are true blacks. Both of these screens are QHD, meaning they're more sharp than a normal traditional Full HD screen. The only difference in terms of just the screen is not the panel itself, but the glass that is protecting them. On the Xiaomi 13T Pro, we had the Corning Gorilla Glass 5, while on the 14T Pro, we have the Gorilla Glass Victus 2. And also both of these screens have the fingerprint scanner at the bottom, so it's pretty much in the same exact space. Essentially, from the front, these two phones look almost identical, if not for the slightly smaller, bezel around the phone, but other than that, it pretty much seems like the same phone. In terms of build, they pretty much are built identically in terms of size and weight. There's pretty much like 3 gram difference, so you're not gonna feel the difference at all. But the biggest difference is definitely the back of the smartphones. The Xiaomi 13T Pro has a glass back. If you didn't get the blue version, which had the synthetic leather on the back, well, the other versions had the glass back, which means it's a fingerprint magnet. You pretty much have to use a case with it so that you don't have the fingerprints all over your smartphone. But overall, I really like the design, with the camera bump being a really nice, I would say, premium looking. While on the Xiaomi 14T Pro, you have a different finish. This is a metal back, which I feel is a better option than the Xiaomi 13T Pro. Maybe I'm not the biggest fan of the camera bump, how it looks like compared to the 13T Pro, but I feel like overall is a bigger improvement in terms of the build. I prefer the metal body that it has compared to the glass on the back, and also the 13T Pro had plastic on the sides of the phone, where the Xiaomi 14T Pro has also metal sides, meaning that it's fully metal, where the Xiaomi 13T Pro was glass with plastic on the sides. Because of that, you can actually see where the antennas are because there's cutouts in the metal. But other than that, I would say it's a pretty nice improvement. I prefer the feeling of the metal than the glass and the plastic, but both are pretty good. This is just a improvement in terms of quality. In terms of internals, both of them are really similarly spec'd. Both have 12 GB of RAM and 512 GB of storage, but you can get the 14T Pro with 1 TB of storage. The biggest difference in terms of these phones, in my opinion, is definitely the processor that they have. While the naming is gonna be pretty similar, the Dimensity 9200 Plus versus the Dimensity 9300 Plus. Essentially, there's 100 difference. But in terms of performance, there is actually some performance that you can actually feel. For example, if you're playing games like Genshin Impact, you can definitely feel that this phone runs at better settings and at better frame rates, more stable than the Xiaomi 13T Pro. On the Xiaomi 13T Pro, I would have to go a little bit lower in the settings to have stable frame rates, and you can definitely see that resolution was taking a hit. Where the MediaTek Dimensity 9300 Plus is definitely closer to something like a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, meaning you have much better performance in gaming. And I can definitely feel that when I play the games, you can play games at better resolution, so overall sharper image with really nice stable frame rates. I would definitely say it's one thing that I felt the difference between them, maybe not in everyday use, because the panel and the frame rates are essentially the same on these two phones in normal day usage, and for normal day usage, both are amazing and more than capable for doing all the daily tasks, but for gaming, I definitely felt that the 14T Pro was an improvement over the 13T Pro. But don't get me wrong, you can still play high and demanding games on the phone. Both of these phones have really good speakers and both of them support Dolby Atmos. Also, both of these support stereo speakers with the bigger speakers on the bottom and smaller speakers supporting them on the top. In terms of battery and charging, there is a little bit of difference between the two models. The 13T Pro has 120 watt charging, which is incredible in terms of speed. I have been using the 14 Ultra at the moment and I just miss the 120 that I get from the 13T Pro. That is how good it is, even if you don't actually engage the boost function when charging. On the 14T Pro, you also have 120 watts of charging, so it's still the same charging speed. The only difference is on the Xiaomi 13T Pro, we actually got the charger, which is 120 watt charger. And on the 14T Pro, you actually don't get it in the box. You have to get it separately. So from just the packaging itself, the Xiaomi 13T Pro has better packaging than the 14T Pro. And while both of these phones get a case, in terms of the 13T Pro we had the clear case, and in the 14T Pro we have a grayish case, which means it's not going to become yellowish after a couple of months. But now you don't see the phone in terms of its color, so you kind of lose that aspect of it. Essentially, the only way I was able to test this 14T Pro 120 watts charging is thanks to the charger that I had from 13T Pro. So in other words, I feel like this is a downgrade and I hope Xiaomi's first time and last time doing this. I really love that Xiaomi really puts all the effort into unboxing and all the different things that you need are in the box. Where on the Xiaomi 14T Pro, I really miss that we didn't have that charger and I just feel like this is not the right way to go. And one more difference in terms of charging, the Xiaomi 14T Pro actually has 50 watt wireless charging. So it's something new that the 13T Pro did not have it. So the 14 series definitely has it and it's a really nice addition. If you like that kind of stuff, you can get a wireless charger for it and take advantage of that. And now probably the most fun and most interesting part for many of us, which is the cameras on the back of these two phones. And to be honest, they're pretty similar in this regard too. Essentially, you have a triple setup on both these. On the 14T Pro, you can definitely see it a little bit better, with one of the circles being a flash. And on the 13T Pro, maybe you cannot see it, but there's two main cameras, one a little bit smaller, and then the flash. So it's a little bit different in terms of how it looks, but just how it works is pretty similar. On both of these phones, we have the 50 megapixel main camera sensor, a 50 megapixel telephoto lens, and also a 12 megapixel wide-angle lens. The difference here is the main camera sensor is a different one. Last year it was a Sony sensor, this time we have an OmniVision Light Hunter. And actually, I have to say, I felt the difference in terms of dynamic range. It definitely felt much better than the 13T Pro. But it's not something I would say is if you already had the 13T Pro, you have to invest into this one. But if you're looking for a phone, this is definitely the better one in terms of the two. It looks really good. I know there's probably some software side to it that makes it look even better. In terms of telephoto, is once again 50 versus 50 megapixel, but on the Xiaomi 13T Pro it was a 2x zoom, so equivalent to a 50mm, where on the Xiaomi 14T Pro they pushed it to a 60mm, so it's more than 2x zoom. And the wide-angle lens is pretty much the same exact sensor and lens. It's no different from the last year's model, so essentially you both have the 12 megapixel sensor with the same sensor and brand on both of these models, so it's pretty much the same in terms of the quality. Maybe the sensor is better because of the software, but overall I did not see much of a difference here. In terms of selfie camera, pretty much they are once again pretty close to each other, but the difference is I definitely felt like the 14T Pro had better dynamic range in selfies, so I would say it's a better camera, but it's not something that is leaps and bounds ahead of it. But I did feel a difference on the selfie camera, definitely. In terms of photos, both of those have collaboration with Leica and both support authentic and vibrant. Essentially, you can take the authentic for more, authentic look and a little bit less colors, or the vibrant with the more punchy and vibrant style of photos. It's all up to your user preference, but both are available on both phones. In terms of videos, once again, there isn't much of a big difference. So we have 8K recording being 30 frames per second on the new model and 24 on the last year's model. Also, we have 4K 60 frames per second on the main and telephoto lens, But on the wide-angle lens, it does not support 4K 60, and I wish that was one of the changes they did with 14T Pro, because it would make it a much bigger improvement, at least for me, in terms of the video department. I just don't like that you have to switch between the 4K 60 when you want to go to wide, so you go to 1080p and 60, and then when you go to 4K, it changes to 30 frames per second, so every time you have to change everything. So I wish they kind of changed that, but it has not happened, and I feel like it's a missed opportunity from Xiaomi to do that. And both of these phones support 4K in 30 frames per second with the log format, which is pretty nice for color grading in post-production. Once again, they're pretty similar in terms of video. All in all, I feel like this phone is just a slight improvement of the 14T Pro. There's some additions, but also we lost the charger, so it's kind of a give and take situation. I still feel like the 13T Pro had just overall nicer design, especially in the blue synthetic leather version over the 14T Pro, but it's a nice metal finish, smaller bezel, so I would say little improvements over the 13T Pro. So if you're looking for a new phone, 14T Pro is definitely the better of the two, but in terms of just side-by-side comparison, I would say they're pretty similar. But you can definitely feel the processor being better for games and more intensive tasks. Overall, both are amazing, and just depends on your budget and what you're looking for in a smartphone. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, that is gonna be the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and I'll see you next time.